An accident. Yingjing Chuanshu became a supporting actress for a wealthy family, and she was forced to die if she didn't follow the plot. Due to excessive extravagance and neglect of her career, she was reborn. In my previous life, I missed the person I truly liked because of the forced plot adaptation. Revive your life and fully unleash yourself in the face of adversity. The plot requires her to love the male lead, but she leans towards the mysterious big shot. Rubbing against it seems a bit out of place. The big shot took the initiative to offer luxury houses and cars. Even all the assets under her name are shared with her. On a certain day, in the midst of secretly planning and pursuing the big shot, I discovered that the big shot seemed to be reborn. She was so scared that all the melon seeds in her hand fell off. The proud little white rabbit is reborn to pursue the male god, but little does she know that the male god has already dug a hole and is waiting for her to jump down. When Fucheng, the richest man in China, has a secret. He loved someone for 2 lifetimes. Chuanshu, Entertainment Circle, Double Rebirth, 1v1, Sweet Pet, Free-spirited and carefree, dressing up as a bookgirl versus rebirth as a beloved wife with a dark belly, mysterious boss, keywords of the novel. The little fairy of Wenye's family flipped through Tianwu pop-up window, the little fairy of Wenye's family flipped through Tianx's complete collection download, and the little fairy of Wenye's family flipped through Tianwu latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Make him his own way home. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Make him his own way home. Yingjing died in a snowy winter with goose feathers. She had a premonition long ago. Arrange everything in advance before leaving. And that letter that hasn't been delivered yet. Yingshan has a beautiful scenery and is located in a remote area with few people coming and going. On this day, there was an extra touch of red on the stairs of the mountain path, moving slowly forward. The woman's hand holding the wooden stick trembled slightly, and a thin layer of sweat oozed from her forehead. Sweat beads slid down her side face. Looking up, there were still over 100 steps left on the stairs. I tugged at the corner of my lips. Still stubbornly climbing upwards. The sound of heartbeat is also getting louder and louder. The little monk who was sweeping the floor saw her throw away the broom in her hand and ran a few steps towards her. He grabbed her sleeve and helped her to the main hall. For several consecutive days, the imperial capital was covered in heavy snow, and the boardwalk was covered in thick snow. Are you here alone? Yingjing glanced at the little monk with a smile and said, It's okay, the snow is just right. In a few days, the mountain road will be blocked by heavy snow and it won't be easy to walk. She took a few steps alone and turned to look at the little monk. 10 years have passed, and now you are taller than me. Although she smiled, her smile did not reach her eyes. This nostalgia did not last long, and I met the abbot in the side hall. In response, he walked straight to the Buddha, knelt down on both knees, and clasped his hands devoutly. 10 years ago, she unintentionally slipped into a novel from the real world and became a supporting actress who had to die without following the plot. Over the past decade, in order to become a stumbling block between the male and female leads, she has committed numerous deaths. She has resisted the plot, but still cannot avoid the predetermined fate. Finally succeeded in killing oneself. Ying's family is gone, her parents are gone, and her brother was also calculated to go to jail for going against the male lead. In the real world, Yingjing died in an air crash. She is an orphan, and speaking of it, she is also carefree. It was Yingjia who gave her warmth and all her care. Unfortunately, she is a supporting actress who is forced to follow the plot. Who knew that 10 years would be the end of her life? 10 years have worn down her temperament a lot, and she no longer has the bright and delicate demeanor of her 20s. A strong sense of sorrow accumulates in her eyes. But she is still very beautiful, standing firm in the stormy entertainment industry for 10 years. Time did not take back her beauty just because of the passage of time. Today, when it comes to beauty, global fans only admire Yingjing's beauty and acting skills. Feeling the position of my heart in response to the situation, it feels a bit hot. There is a secret hidden there for 10 years. The abbot in the temple added some oil to the Changming lamp in the temple. Master, where do you think people will go after death? This world is no longer as simple as a book to her. All the people around her are the most real beings with flesh and blood. Miss Ying's ultimate destination is wherever she wants to go. Is it really like this? She smiled. Having gone through so much, Yingjing still left the cleanest place in his heart and the last bit of beautiful fantasy. I want to start over again. Without the constraints of the plot, there is only one true heart, and I can express that love to him. She said her words of love, much like the little girl who saw his heart move when she saw him. Listening to the whispers behind him, the master walked out of the hall and his gaze fell a bit far. At this moment, there was an extra black touch on the steps of the mountain slope, and the snow was getting heavier and heavier as it fell. Yingjing walked out of the main hall towards the inner courtyard, which was the only clean place that had not yet been covered by snow. Looking up, a towering tree supports a small world below. She sat on the bench under the tree. I don't know if I sensed the arrival of death, but at some point the snow stopped flying. Yingjing reached out and caught a few falling snowflakes. The brief sunset broke through the sky, reflecting a crimson hue. The warm sunshine projects down from the gaps in the treetops. She reached out and caught warmth. There was no pain on her face, she was smiling. Looking back on her brief life, until her gaze gradually blurred, she seemed to see a familiar figure appearing at the end of the road. That person swept through the wind and snow, but his body was incredibly warm. He carefully embraced her into his arms. Unfortunately, it seems like she can't catch him anymore. In response, he shouted her name hoarsely, repeatedly stroking her hair with reluctance. Where am I? She responded to him. He was her 10-year dream, a love she gritted her teeth and dared not say. In this lifetime, she has apologized to too many people. She firmly grasped his hand. My brother, he is innocent. Please save him. The handsome man looked haggard and gently caressed her cheek over and over again, agreeing to all her demands. That's good. This is the only thing she can do. No, there's one more important thing. When Fucheng, have I never told you that I really like you? From the beginning of a book, those cold words began to take life, jumping in her life at some point. You don't exist, you have always been there. It was all in her heart. If this is a dream, can you stay in my dream for more time? She regretted it, she has been regretting it for so many years. It is impossible for a young man to travel abroad for so many years. He has been quietly guarding her in a foreign land for so many years. She knew he would always be watching her from afar, so she went to great lengths to climb up to the place with the highest starlight. I want him to know that although we can't be together, Yingjing has always stood where he can see at a glance. He held her in his arms, kissing the delicate eyebrows and eyes of the woman over and over again, telling her that it was not a dream. She knows. But she was going to find her dream. If there is an afterlife. There is no forced plot, the path she wants to take must be towards his side. Smooth and unobstructed. She is like a butterfly, thinking she won't be deeply immersed in flowers, but ultimately chooses to die under them. Make him his own way back. It is widely known that the most legendary movie queen in China fell in love with the Lu family's Lu Zixu in response to the scene. She pursued Lu Zixu for 10 years without changing her heart, and finally watched him marry her, committing suicide at the age of 30. From then on, the legend of the generation came to an end. Everyone was filled with sighs and sighs. Unfortunately, the situation has come to such an end. Later, I heard a senior monk from a temple say, "Ah. That one. Those who don't love Lu Zixu have never loved him." I can't listen to the words of a monk. 3 years later, when Fucheng, the richest man in China, abdicated to his nephew. Donate all of one's wealth to society. I was 43 years old when I went missing. Speaking of this, the only one who can be called a legend is probably the deceased actress. A year later, a new tomb was added next to the solitary tomb. A building that reads, "Beloved," in response to the occasion. The other one reads, "Wen Fucheng." When I met Wen Fucheng in my childhood, I missed 10 years of my life. A 20-year-old delicate girl rushed back home and pushed open heavy doors with her hands raised. The man standing in front of the courtyard turned to look at her before she could say anything. The afternoon sun shone on him. It is the warmth that penetrates through time, and it also falls on her heart. She stared at him blankly. Yingjing always remembers that summer, even the wind blowing over was sweet. He said his name is Wen Fucheng. She confided all her love to the only person who knew about the past. As the oil runs out and the lamp withers, all the past will also be buried in time. Ding, the countdown to rebirth is on. 10:9-8, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Yingjing really misses him too much. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Yingjing really misses him too much. With a click, the bathroom mirror shattered. Accompanied by the sound of shattering, Yingjing, lying flat on the bed, slowly opened his eyes. She first raised her hand and glanced at the delicate gauze wrapped around her wrist. Put it down again. Immediately, he showed an incredulous look and sat up from the bed in shock. My heart was filled with turbulent waves. The scene before her was so familiar that before she could think too much, the door was quickly pushed open from the outside. The next second, Yingmu, with a haggard face, hurriedly entered the room, tears streaming in her eyes. Yingmu heard a sound downstairs and rushed up. The tone was full of concern. "Baby, are you awake? Is there anything uncomfortable?" Under the woman's inquiry, Yingjing shook his head. Her mind is a bit confused now, unsure whether what is happening in front of her is a dream or reality. She should be dead. At the age of 30. At some point, I quickly lifted the blanket and didn't even bother putting on my shoes, heading straight to the bathroom. Not even the broken glass on the ground pierced into the soles of the feet. The remaining half of the mirror was glued to the wall, with countless cracks spreading their teeth and claws, revealing their own faces through the cracks. Looking at the remnants among countless fragments, she was filled with worries. Fingertips subconsciously caressed the delicate skin on the face. Under Ying's mother's screams, she fiercely pinched the flesh on her body. She immediately shed tears in pain. Ying's mother came over and pulled her hand with heartache, feeling extremely angry. "You said you're being foolish again. Our family doesn't have money, why do you have to be that poor kid? You even cut his wrist for hunger strike." Yes. Now it can be confirmed that she has been reborn, until the age of 20. Ying's family is still alive, parents are healthy, and my brother is also alive. It was not long before she wore it in her previous life. Yingjing wept with joy and turned around to tightly embrace Yingmu. "Mom, I'm sorry." Ying's mother only thought that she was apologizing for her foolish behavior and didn't think much about it. Only those who have experienced life and death can understand. Her apology spanned 2 lifetimes. "It's okay, as long as you're okay," my mother kept soothing Yingjing's emotions. "Mom, I'm a bit tired. Can you give me a good rest?" She needs to take a good rest now. Ying's mother talked a lot, but it was always for her good. After my mother left, she sat on the bed in a daze. After all, she didn't know if she needed to follow the plot again after trying to revive herself. She never wanted to experience the feeling of dying back to the plot point without following the plot in her previous life. The pain in her feet pulled back her thoughts, and she carefully removed the glass fragments and threw them into the trash can. After wiping the medicine, she lay in bed feeling bored and scrolled through her phone. As she scrolled through it, she saw her friend Wen Yu's social media post a few minutes ago. "Wen Yu. Uncle Air comes to Shanghai for a small gathering. Image, the half-fair hand wearing a watch shown in the photo will never be forgotten by Yingjing for a lifetime. She stood up with some excitement. Shouldn't Fucheng, in the original plot of his previous life, only come to Shanghai at the end of the year? Why did it appear in September now? It's no wonder she remembers so clearly, it's really because Fucheng left a deep impression on her. The mysterious and unpredictable family ruler in the original novel has always been a powerful presence. Heavier than the male lead's aura. Unfortunately, there are not many descriptions of him in the novel, and the author has exhausted all the fancy language in the only few appearances. At one point, I thought that Fucheng was the protagonist. Is it because the rebirth plot also deviates? Or is it that she has now freed herself from the control of the plot? At the thought of this possibility, Yingjing jumped with joy. Seizing the scene and carrying his bag, he quickly ran down the stairs. The mother who was originally downstairs instructed the aunt at home to make a delicious table. I was planning to invite her to dinner when I saw that the person had already come down and was in good spirits, so I smiled and called out Yingjing. Wave at her. Jingbao is up. I was just going to call you, come and have dinner. Mom, I have an urgent matter to go out, you can eat by yourself. Put on your shoes, push open the door, and most of the people crowded out. Yingjing stood in front of the door, thinking of something and turned around to look worried inside the room as she spoke to Yingmu in front of the door. Mom, don't worry. I'm not looking for Lu Zishu. You just happen to be running around, how can I rest assured? When people chase after them, they run as fast as rabbits in response to the scene, and there are no shadows. This child doesn't seem to have any signs of cutting his wrist or committing suicide for a man at all. The monk stood by the roadside, exhausted and panting. I came out in such a hurry that I almost forgot the main matter. She really misses him too much. Thinking of someone she knew being present, she immediately dialed her friend's phone number. Su Yi received a phone call from Yingjing and is currently meeting with several friends. Today's game belongs to the Wenyu team. When the sudden bell rang in the private room, it immediately caught the attention of those present. Su Yi stood up and cut open the phone, shouting in a warm voice. In response to the situation. A friend on the side joked, "Is that little princess's phone number from Ying's family? It's all so obvious now. Ask Jingbao to come out and play with her. It's been a long time since I saw her." Has the little girl still followed Lu Zishu without any success? Jiang Cheng and Su Yi are good friends and have a lot of contact with the Ying family. They are also familiar with Yingjing. There are few girls in this generation of these major families, and she has become the little sister that these young masters hold in their hearts. Smooth sailing along the way. Except for in the second year of high school, when I was caught off guard, my mind went crazy and I had to chase a poor boy. Lu Zishu. Yes, Lu Zishu. Speaking of this Lu Zishu, Jiang Cheng was filled with anger. I don't know what's good about Lu Zishu. Jiang Cheng thought it was who he was asking, and was going to pour out roast. Turning his head, Fucheng looked at him with a cold gaze, as if he was saying, why didn't he continue? Uncle Air, you also like to listen to gossip. Jiang Cheng sweated coldly. Well, I enjoy listening. Under the dim yellow light, the man answered calmly. Fucheng was so outspoken that those who were far away only knew they were chatting, while those who were close, such as Jiang Cheng's gaze, began to be intriguing. That's interesting to say. The few men present tonight are all dragons and phoenixes among the people, and they will also be half of the sky in Shanghai in the future. This Fucheng is different. Although he is a few years older than them, his status has been directly elevated. The Wen family is the wealthiest in the imperial capital, which is also the economic center of the entire country of China. In recent years, Wen's industry has spread throughout the country. After Fucheng ascended to power, it was even more remarkable. As for why this person is here today, it is purely due to his nephew Wen Yu's leakage. There are too many people who want to meet Wen Fucheng. This person has a great reputation and is impressive. When it's time to be mischievous, when it's time to be serious. Seeing idol-like characters, these young masters who usually fight and fuss tend to restrain themselves quite a bit. End of this chapter. Chapter 3 is the position of Lady Chanwen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 is the position of Lady Chanwen when Fucheng speaks very little, and most of them listen to him. Occasionally having a sip of tea. He politely declined anyone who added alcohol to him. Some people laugh and say that Mr. Wen, at a young age, doesn't drink alcohol or have good tea, but rather lives a retired life. Wen Fucheng once said, "As we get older, we need to take care of ourselves. Adding up so many years from my previous life, it doesn't just mean I'm getting older. Mr. Wen is only 20.9, how can he be said to be old? It is during the prime of his life that many young girls like his handsome appearance." The man's face was plain and it was hard to see through his inner thoughts, but when you said that his second uncle was not easy to mess with. Others dare not say much. Sui finished answering the phone and walked into the room, his gaze scanning around before finally landing on a low-key black-clad man in a corner. This person is low-key, but his inherent aura cannot be ignored. Jiangqing noticed that the atmosphere was not right and stood up to embrace his friend's shoulder. "Why is your complexion not good? Is something wrong with Yingjing's side?" "It's okay, she'll come over for dinner later. Eating is one thing, and there is another thing." Yingjing asked him by name on the phone if Wen Fucheng was here. In the past, he would have been unfamiliar with his answers, but today it's all different. This person is indeed here. Jiangqing opened his mouth and didn't know for a moment whether to tell his friend about the little incident just now. A few minutes ago, Sui stood outside at the wind vent. Why did Yingjing suddenly inquire about Wen Fucheng? That's not an easy person to mess with. I just heard that he is very powerful, so I don't want to ask if you have any way. I'll take a look. Second brother, help me out. You know, I recently participated in a competition hosted by Emperor Entertainment. Do you want to use the back door? Nonsense. Yingjing's tone instantly rose. I just want to see what the future boss looks like. I promise not to act recklessly, be obedient. How could Yingjing be honest? After leaving the door and being blown by the cold wind, his mind suddenly became much clearer. After calming down, I felt a bit rushed. Wen Fucheng doesn't know her yet. She just hurriedly yells and posts it on her. Will the other party confuse her with those women who want to become Lady Wen in power? Standing on the roadside, Yingjing suddenly realized. It's not impossible to mix them up, she just went for the lady's seat. She just greets Wen Fucheng's body. It is well known that the four young masters in Shanghai doted on the person from the Ying family, but Sui couldn't resist Yingjing's coquettishness and reluctantly agreed. The people over there have already boarded the car. He hung up the phone happily. Give yourself a thumbs up in your heart. She is now vaguely looking forward to the moment she sees him. The traffic was a few minutes late on the road, and when Yu arrived a few minutes before the scene, holding a young girl in his hand. Let me introduce you. Jiangqing, Sui, Yiqing, and others are all my good brothers. This is my second uncle. Yan Shuang's gaze stared at Wen Fucheng for a few seconds, and he only glanced at her lightly before retracting his gaze. When you went to college in Shanghai and dated a girlfriend. It is said that during the Chinese New Year, I want to bring back the imperial capital Wen family, but the door of the Wen family is not so easy to enter. I'm afraid my family will oppose getting a preventive shot in advance, and this preventive shot is Wen Fucheng. After all, it's only up to the master of the Wen family to decide now. Wen Fucheng came here for this matter. Secondly, it's for another matter. When it comes to such calculations, the second thing seems to be more important than the first one. His gaze fell on the tightly closed door for the third time, calming his mind. The assistant came with him and whispered, "Mr. Wen, why don't we go back and rest first when we see each other?" When Fucheng just returned from abroad, landed in the imperial capital, and directly transferred to Shanghai without resting all the way. Who said they saw someone? Ah. The assistant looked at the girl next to Wen Yu with a puzzled expression. Soft and weak, quietly leaning against Wen Yu's side like a pure and harmless little white rabbit. Yan Shuang gently tugged at Wen Yu's hem. "Uncle Air doesn't like me, does he?" Wen Yu calmed the girl's emotions. "No, Uncle Air has this kind of temperament. Actually, he's very good. Don't worry. We won't see each other in person in the future. As long as he agrees to our matter, no one in the Wen family will dare to object." Yan Shuang smiled gently at him, but unconsciously looked towards the person sitting in the main seat. Everyone was chatting in a few words when the door creaked and was pushed open. It did not affect the sound of conversation in the inner room, but it was the one who first noticed the visitor and didn't retract his gaze. Jiang Cheng and Wen Fucheng were chatting about some matters in the company. Halfway through the conversation, I followed the man's gaze and saw the scene. The little girl lay limply at the door, sticking out her head and looking inside. It seems to be looking at the people in the room. That pair of agile eyes are very lively as they move around. Jiang Cheng laughed and said, "Jingbao has arrived, come in quickly." With a chuckle in response, he completely pushed open the door. The lights in the hallway projected into the room, amplifying her beauty even further. "Good afternoon, third brother." Su Yi also saw her and immediately called the little girl over to sit down, her words full of concern. She knew most of the people present, so she wasn't very polite. It's so sweet to shout one by one. When it came to Wen Fucheng, even the sweetest mouth got stuck. In her previous life, she had no connection with Wen Fucheng until her death, but she was in a similar circle and it was difficult to know any news about him. "There's no way, the other party is really amazing." Su Yi went out to answer the phone. Wen Yu is busy accompanying his girlfriend with tenderness and sweetness. Jiang Qing leaned on Wen Fucheng's previous words and couldn't grasp it for a moment without speaking. "Wen Fucheng." His voice was slightly low, but very clear, and his ears lit up in response to the situation. "Hello, Mr. Wen." The little girl's eyebrows and eyes curved, and she smiled like a silly and cute fox. He couldn't help but feel a smile in his eyes, as no one could see clearly through the dim light. He carefully examined the girl in front of him. That's her. He deserves to be reborn with such a good temper. In response, Mr. Wen asked Su Yi, who had hung up the phone and walked into the room, to hear him and slap him on the back. "What's your name, Mr. Wen?" "That's Uncle Air." They all need to respectfully address someone, and naturally they have to follow suit. Yingjing is not very willing to call people, and she has no blood relationship with Wen Fucheng. Besides, it's not easy to handle things after calling second uncle, and it's easy to get distracted. "Mr. Wen is so young, what's his name?" "Uncle Air." "I think it's more like calling him Brother Wen." Her words to some extent caused dissatisfaction among the young masters present. Who benefits from putting Jingbao here? They are called Uncle Wen Fucheng, and Yingjing is called Brother Wen. So they have to call Yingjing something. This ant is actually thinking of beauty. In the end, Su Yi pressed his head and called out, "Second uncle," to the man sitting on the sofa. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. White Moonlight Battle. Malicious female supporting actress. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. White Moonlight Battle. Malicious female supporting actress. The arrival of the scene made the atmosphere much more lively, until a clear voice interspersed through. "It's a coincidence that we met here. When you looked at the people. How do you two know each other?" Later, I thought about it. Yan Shuang was acting in the West City of Shanghai University. One is in the east and the other is in the west. Yingjing really didn't expect to see severe frost here. I heard that Wen Yu has made a girlfriend and is very lucky. Some people are placing bets in the group asking him how long he can hold on this time. Wen Yu directly said that he wanted to see his parents. It seems that this time it's for real. Yingjing and Yan Shuang have nothing to do with each other. If we had to put them together and talk about their relationship, they would probably be high school classmates. If you insist on uncovering some more gossip. Okay. Yan Shuang is the white moonlight that Lu Zishu loves but cannot. Yan Shuang High School is like a goddess surrounded by stars and moon, with a small amount of money at home. Since childhood, she was sent by her parents to learn dance. Good physique and high talent. After graduation, I was directly admitted to the Fucheng Theater. To put it simply, they are likely to enter the entertainment industry in the future. Wen Fucheng is the owner of the entertainment industry in the imperial court, and even his nephew is considered a minor crown prince. By establishing this relationship and firmly grasping Wen Yu, the path after the severe frost will be much smoother. Oh, pity that Lu Zishu. Still working hard to study and work hard, hoping to give him a bright future under the moonlight. Wait, why did she sympathize with Lu Zishu? Shouldn't she be the hardest one now? Thinking of this, she quietly looked at Wen Fucheng, and at the moment when his gaze met, he was also looking at her. Scared, she immediately withdrew her gaze and felt anxious inside. What's going on? There is an illusion of being caught by parents for stealing and doing bad things. But that's her future man. Let's see if it doesn't work. The more you look, the better it looks. The more you look, the more satisfied you become. That hand, that leg, that face. That Jiangqing saw the little girl's hot and straightforward eyes towards her, and her saliva was almost flowing down. Lowering his head, he whispered, "Are you interested? Be more restrained. That's not someone anyone can provoke." Wen Fucheng's methods and skills are somewhat intimidating for those who walk around the mall, and several people present have also witnessed them. Yingjing, however, did not take it seriously. She had seen his gentle side, even if it only showed a little bit, it was enough to be stunning. When it was time to eat, I went out to the restroom and met Yan Shuang, who came 1 minute late. Yingjing, who was standing in front of the mirror washing his hands, glanced at the other person in the mirror. No one entered the compartment, but instead stood there watching her with great interest. The visitor was not kind, so she took the initiative to speak up. "Miss Yan, what's up? Do you like Wen Fucheng?" is an affirmative statement, not a doubt. Many people saw it just now, especially Yan Shuang's understanding of that kind of gaze, which is a woman's admiration and interest in men. "Is it related to you?" I dried my hand and was about to walk out when the other person lifted my foot and stopped me. "How many meanings do you mean? Do you want to fight? She is wearing a beautiful little dress today, which is not suitable for being rude. Miss Yan, what are you planning to do?" She cannot match the status of Yingjing, as there are many people present who protect Yingjing. She is just Wen Yu's girlfriend. Wen Yu has dated many women, but only she was brought before Wen Fucheng. It can be imagined that this woman's methods are also extraordinary. Yan Shuang is very clever and takes the initiative to make way. "It's nothing, just to remind Miss Ying. You can't take a man like Wen Fucheng." Yingjing, who had already walked to the door, was told by her and turned to look at the person. "Oh, really? Who said I'm going to take him? Isn't it okay for him to come and take me?" After she finished speaking, she left a graceful figure and left on her own. Leave a calm face of severe frost. What about Lu Zishu? Don't you like him anymore? Yan Shuang almost wanted to catch up. As the voice behind him approached, he frowned in response to the scene. "I almost forgot the plot of the male lead in the book that I couldn't refuse. Lu Zishu. It needs to be solved. But it's not urgent, take your time. After all, she doesn't know if the plot has been broken free from the heavy lifting. We need to find an opportunity to experiment. Since you all know I like Lu Zishu, why do you rely on him so close? Isn't Wenyu your boyfriend? In the original text, Yan Shuang, the White Moonlight, had no less liking for Lu Zishu than Wenyu. She couldn't bear to let go of Lu Zishu's kindness to her until she confirmed her relationship with Wenyu. Wandering between two men with his superb acting skills. Others may not know, but Yingjing, who had read books and experienced the plot in his previous life, is very clear about the bug. Miss Yen has good skills, so you also need to pay attention to the distance of the boat you are stepping on. In case the waves rise one day and the boat capsizes. After a while of absence, Yingjing suddenly became eloquent. I used to see her following Lu Zishu like a gentle little white rabbit. Miss Ying's acting skills are really good. In front of me, it's one thing, but before Z wrote it, it's another thing. Do you know that Lu Zishu knows you are such a person? He likes to know or not knowing how to pull it down. Anyway, Lu Zishu never liked her at all. In the early stage, I liked the White Moonlight, but in the later stage, I fell in love and killed the real female protagonist. Only she became a vicious supporting actress who couldn't help but love her. In the previous life, everyone finally found their ultimate destination. She is foolish, she is miserable. So young and dead, unable to be with the person you truly like. The more you think about the situation, the more angry you become. She did something wrong, even though she was wearing a book, she encountered a forced plot. Do you really think I like Lu Zishu? No, she has never liked Lu Zishu before. The girl's heart was lost on another person in the afternoon shortly after wearing it. The sudden sadness overwhelmed Yingjing. In my previous life, I knew that if I didn't leave the plot, I would die and return to the plot point. However, in response to the situation, I tried many methods. Finally discovered a small bug. As long as she obediently follows the plot and minimizes the damage, she can still get through the plot. Perhaps she kept it to herself too much and ultimately lost to fate. She doesn't want to be a bad person, but she has to become one. Yan Shuang is truly bad to the bone. Nowadays, Lu Zishu has no money, no power, and no status. He is just a poor student who looks good and studies well. After being found by the Lu family in the imperial capital, he transformed into the prince of the Lu family group. If Yingjing is not mistaken, the groundbreaking family recognition ceremony will take place at the end of the year. Whether you believe it or not, it's all there is to say. Finally, I'll give you one sentence. If you do anything wrong, you'll die. Wenyu is a good person, I hope you don't disappoint him. Yingjing was too lazy to say more to her and quickly left the scene. She hates Yan Shuang, but she doesn't dislike Wenyu. In the previous life, Wenyu married Yan Shuang, but in the end, he returned to the Lu family because of Lu Zishu, and the male protagonist's aura of strength in the Lu family. Yan Shuang's White Moonlight carried Wenyu backwards, while Lu Zishu had already made emotional progress in meeting the female lead at that time. Yan Shuang secretly caused many obstacles for the female protagonist, which were eventually solved by Lu Zishu. Finally, Wenyu and Yan Shuang divorced. In the year of Yingjing's death, Wenyu was also alone, as for what happened later. She is also unaware. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Getting rid of the plot and unleashing oneself. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Getting rid of the plot and unleashing oneself. Rather than knowing about Wenyu later, she wanted to know if Fucheng had lived a good life after her death. Maybe married, with a daughter, or maybe a son. He will definitely be a good father and husband. Although none of these belong to her. She is really too afraid that he will grow old alone. The more I think about it, the more eager I am to see him. She no longer wants to waste a minute or a second and miss out on the opportunity to spend time with him. Accelerate your steps in response to the situation. 10 seconds later, I turned the corner and collided with a meat wall in a very idle drama. In response to the scene, he was stunned and looked up at the meat wall. Bang, my heart beats like thunder. When Fucheng turned the corner and saw a girl in a daze. The lips curved slightly imperceptibly, then casually crossed over the other person. At this moment, there is only her and him in the entire corridor. What are you hesitating about with such a good way of approaching someone? If you miss this village, there won't be this shop. Mr. 1. Yingjing is in a hurry and can't wait to stop the person before speaking. Stopping, the man turned to his side, his indifferent gaze resting on the crimson blush that began to appear on her face. With his eyes closed and his heart horizontal, he took 2 steps forward and stood in front of the man. You. Second uncle, your tie is crooked. I can't keep up with my OCD, I'm really sorry, he said, shaking his hand and directly pulling the other person's tie upwards. It seems that after exerting too much force, her fingertips accidentally touched the man's Adam's apple, causing her hand to shrink, and she turned and ran away quickly. Leaving the man standing in place with an unclear expression, he looked at the tie that was originally a bit crooked but now completely crooked. Thinking of the hairband covering her wrist, her face darkened a bit imperceptibly. The assistant was also startled when he found it. Mr. 1, are you okay? Is this a robbery or a robbery? It's okay, I was scratched by a passing kitten. Let's go. As I walked forward, I tidied up my tie and concealed the emotions in my eyes. Seizing the opportunity, he quickly finished his bad deeds and ran all the way to the outdoor balcony. Stopping and gasping for breath. She's really crazy, she actually got caught. When Fucheng wouldn't treat her like a female hooligan and give her a big comparison, would he? He must have wanted to kill her just now, but she ran fast. Yingjing is a rascal with a lecherous heart but no lecherous courage. Standing on the balcony, the wind blew for a while and my legs began to tremble before I bravely walked back. I didn't see him in the private room when I returned. Upon hearing from Jiangqing that when Fucheng had something to do, he took a step forward. Upon hearing the news, he breathed a sigh of relief, with a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Yan Shuang snorted coldly and walked over to Wen Yu's side, obediently sitting down. Yingjing is too lazy to argue with her. Lying on the table with the deflated balloon, Su Yi ordered a lot of dishes for her. Look at how thin you are, eat more. Taking a few bites with chopsticks, Su Yi's gaze fell on her right hairband. Is it convenient to wear headbands without tying hair? It's okay, it's quite convenient. Are you joking? If she took off her headband, everyone would see the gauze wrapped around her hands. It's getting dark, Su Yi and Jiangqing are both going to take her home. Not short of this time, let's go. Su Yi looked at his watch. It's okay, you guys are busy with everything, and I'm quite free. I'm planning to go to the bookstore across the street to buy a book. You guys go ahead, go ahead. Uncle Li will pick me up later. That's it. It's a bit reassuring to have someone at home pick them up. The two of them were deceived and turned around to look at the club sign behind them. After thinking for a moment, I walked back in. There are not many people in the membership club, and only influential figures can walk around here. She soon saw the figure of Lu Zishu among a group of waiters. No wonder she has sharp eyes, the male lead's aura is really powerful. You can come out for a meal and run into someone who works part-time. Seeing Lu Zishu with 7 twists and turns, he didn't immediately approach and stop the person. But looking down at the place where he was standing, Wen Yu and Yan Shuang, who happened to be late, were holding hands and chatting happily with each other. Yingjing squatted in the corner, watching with his own eyes as Lu Zishu stared at the man and woman not far away with red eyes. This capsized ship came too quickly, and she only warned severe frost in the restroom a few minutes ago. Yan Shuang couldn't laugh while smiling. Because she had already seen Lu Zishu, dressed in a waiter's uniform, holding a plate right ahead. When you noticed that her complexion was not good, so he reached out and touched her face. What's wrong? It's okay, it's a bit stuffy. When you and his friends haven't finished speaking yet, so let Yan Shuang go out and wait for him. Yan Shuang glanced at Lu Zixu and turned around, walking out in high heels. After hesitating for a moment, Lu Zixu followed suit, and a few seconds later, Yingjing also followed suit. She must quickly determine whether she has escaped from the plot. This is a good opportunity. Lu Zixu caught up and pulled Yan Shuang's wrist. Yan Shuang threw it off with a backhand. Be vigilant and look around, afraid that when you will come out and see it at this moment. Yan Shuang, are you with someone like that? What kind of person is that? Can you become that kind of person? Well, I nodded silently in my heart. He can do it. Just a few months later, the legendary school grass from a poor family's identity will undergo a shocking reversal. Returned to the imperial capital by the Lu family, although not comparable to other major families, still holds a high status in the imperial capital. My thoughts drifted for a few seconds, and there was already an argument over there. I don't know what Lu Zixu said, but Yan Shuang left in embarrassment and anger. When he ran away, his eyes turned red. Lu Zixu punched fiercely on the pillar beside him. A few seconds later, Lu Zixu surprisingly walked in the direction hidden by Yingjing. She didn't run away. Miss Ying, have you seen enough jokes? Oh my, it's been discovered. Yingjing immediately stood out with great grace, and her beautiful attire was very eye-catching. Some people are born without the need to do anything, and their background alone surpasses most people. Stand straight in response to the situation. I came to eat openly, but who knew I would meet you? Are you here to work and study? Miss Ying, have you forgotten? This job was still introduced by you. I wiped it, she really forgot. She introduced it. She is really a kind-hearted fairy. Lu Zixu looked at her with an indescribable expression. There are compromises that involve patience, unwillingness, and helplessness. The words were quite gritted with teeth. I am very grateful that you introduced me to this job, but I will definitely not accept your pursuit. In the future, I will return the money to you. Also, I don't need your support, you can take back that money. I'm completely confused about the situation, what's going on? Did she die too long and completely forget about it? When did she even sponsor Lu Zixu? Isn't it good to use this money to buy a bag? That's it. Well. That's good. Now it was Lu Zixu's turn to reveal his doubts. He still remembered how the wealthy lady insisted on forcing him to accept the money at that time. Now it's transitioning. Did you wake her up that day? End of this chapter. Chapter 6. He slowly approaches her. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. He slowly approaches her in the past. Yingjing either pestered Lu Zixu in front of him or on the phone every day. If it weren't for seeing her here tonight, Lu Zixu would have thought she had disappeared without a trace. Thinking of this, he also felt that the words he cursed a few days ago were a bit excessive. The words I said a few days ago. It was evident that Lu Zixu intended to apologize, but he didn't have much intention to listen. She waved her hand indifferently. I know, don't you like me? I've always known that. So don't worry, Yingjing suddenly patted his shoulder with a heavy heart. I won't cling to you anymore. Not only will I not cling to you, but I will also stay away from you. I apologize to the humanitarian team in response to the situation. Previously, it was because of the plot that she had no choice. But now, there are no consequences for what she said earlier. She was already ecstatic in her heart. She was finally beyond the control of the plot. After Yingjing left, Lu Zixu stood in place. I don't know what's going on, but his heart seems to be feeling a bit empty. It's probably because of a sudden lack of habit that he's feeling a bit uncomfortable. Yingjing seems to have changed from this moment on. It's also a good thing, anyway he never thought about getting involved with these wealthy families. I think that person was just a whim, and now that he's tired of playing, he naturally doesn't care. Thinking of this, the man pulled a hint of mockery. Yingjing sneezed while walking on the road. The girl stood on the roadside, bowing her head and playing with her nails, absent-minded. She didn't know if there would be any consequences of facing the male lead so openly. She can't care about everything now. Not caring about falling out with Lu Zishu might not be good. Standing under the Guanmao building. Looking up at the stars in the sky. Until a car slowly stopped in front of her, thinking it was Uncle Li who had arrived, the girl happily opened the car door and was about to come forward, realizing something was wrong. When did her family drive such a bold car? Stop holding the hand on the handlebar. The car window in front slowly lowered, and the figure of the man in the back seat gradually appeared. When Fucheng, he exclaimed in amazement, blurting out the other person's full name. The man's eyes showed a faint smile, and the pen in his hand wrapped around him, his voice echoing in the darkness. Isn't it called second uncle anymore? With a hint of humor. And a hint of imperceptible tenderness. The little girl lowered her head and silently roast. Tell Uncle Air to be seen outside. Yingjing never expected to run into Wen Fucheng's car on the roadside, he had already left. Embarrassed now, I teased the other person and then hit the gun. He shouldn't have been waiting here specifically to catch her for revenge. Unfortunately, the surroundings were too quiet, with only the sound of traffic and wind coming and going. Her words fell clearly into the ear of the person on the seat. Watching the once delicate rose with its head drooping lazily, the man's palm twitched as he wanted to lift it up for her. I want a gentle touch. Are you going home? Ah. Yes. I have to go home. Release the hand held on the car door and step back to the side of the road. Sorry, I mistook the wrong car. She suddenly stopped in front of her, thinking it was the driver, Uncle Li. The voice behind interrupted the conversation between the two. Speaking slowly and quickly, when you led Yan Shuang over. Yan Shuang's face no longer had the appearance of pear blossoms with rain as before. When watched Yingjing standing on the roadside from a distance, and the car in front of him was a bit familiar. When he approached, he knew everyone. Uncle Air, why are you still here? I heard that Wen Fucheng highly values this nephew, and since graduating from high school, Wen Yu has been studying management companies with him. In Wen Yu's heart, he also greatly respected this second uncle. Regardless of the purpose for which he made a girlfriend, he always told Wen Fucheng first. I met an acquaintance and said a few more words, which delayed some time. It's so late, if it's okay, you should go back early to rest. When Yu nodded, he understood. Just now, he also met a friend in the lobby and exchanged a few pleasantries. Yan Shuang was completely ignored by her boyfriend throughout the entire process, but when she intentionally wanted to speak to Wen Fucheng, she was forced to retreat by the man's cold frost. He is not satisfied. Not satisfied with her niece-in-law. Yan Shuang gritted her teeth to prevent her emotions from leaking. On the other hand, Yingjing answered the phone and looked at the people inside the car with some difficulty, his smiling face almost blossoming. Uncle Air. The driver's uncle is stuck in traffic on the way and won't be able to pass. Can you take me to the station ahead by the way? I'll take the bus home by myself. When Yu was about to say it's impossible. His second uncle is very unfriendly, so he can drop him off if it's not on his way. Who knew that my usually cold and frosty second uncle would sit next to him and vacate a seat, with a clear intention of not catering to anyone. In response, he clapped his hands and sat down on the car door with a thud. Still considerate, Chanwen waved his hand more and more. The car drove forward, revealing the window that had not yet been closed. Yan Shuang, standing next to Wen Yu, glared at her with malicious eyes. As if saying, little slut. Yingjing didn't want to be outdone and stared back. You're not cheap. As soon as she got into the car, she quickly sent a message to the driver's uncle, asking him to drive the car to Chanwen building and wait for her. The car has a lot of space, but she leans in the corner. Yu Guang caught a glimpse of the man sitting next to him, flipping through a book in his hand. What book is so beautiful? Yingjing was a bit curious, but didn't dare to get too close. The sudden ringing of the bell is very piercing in the quiet space. When Fucheng lifted his eyelids and looked towards her, feeling flustered as he took out his phone to press it down. The sky didn't meet people's wishes, and in a hurry, I pressed to answer. Adapt to the situation. The three big characters, like him, on the screen are dazzling. I wipe it, I want to die in response to the situation. What kind of ghostly remark is this? I've only met before, she gritted her head and put her phone to her ear. What? I want to call Lu Zishu through the screen, but what kind of phone call to make at this time really affects her love and romance? I have returned the money to you, please take a look at your bank card. The other party spoke coldly. As soon as Lu Zishu finished work, he transferred the money back to her, looking very anxious to distance himself from her. That's okay, now Yingjing is more anxious than him. Yingjing was also unhappy, and his tone was also full of anger. Well, okay. I got it, that's it. Without hesitation, I couldn't wait to hang up the phone. What I don't want to show in front of Wen Fucheng has too much to do with Lu Zishu. Did he hear me just now? Feeling regretful in response to the situation. I must have heard it, not only did I hear it, but I also saw the notes. Angry, she poked her phone screen several times and immediately changed the note. Wen Fucheng watched as she changed the note into 3 words. Lu Zishu. I couldn't help but ask. Is it someone you like? Yingjing followed the cat with its tail stepped on, and its fur exploded all over its body. No, no, no. Deny Sonlian. I don't like him, it's nothing to do with him. How could I possibly like Lu Zishu? What I like is... All the words came to an abrupt end, and the carriage suddenly became quiet like a chicken. She looks like a pufferfish with her belly poked, so cute. No, it's not. Why are you in such a hurry? As he spoke, a piece of paper was handed over to Yingjing. She broke out in sweat amidst excitement and nervousness. Seeing her not answering, Wen Fucheng's eyes darkened. The next second, the paper covered her forehead. Through a thin piece of paper, the temperature of the man's fingertips gradually increased. He slowly approached her. I said a sentence, end of this chapter. Chapter 7. Brother promises not to kill you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Brother promises not to kill you. When Fucheng's approach instantly made Yingjing blush. Fortunately, the darkness blocked the shyness on her face. She doesn't think the other person has the idea of kissing her in such an ambiguous situation. Heart and mind are only 2 or 3 seconds apart. Colorful neon lights quietly slipped into the car and flashed past the girl's face. The warmth of fingertips presses down the weight from the center of the eyebrows. Wipe it yourself. Before the tissue fell off his face, Yingjing reached out and pressed it down. A tissue attached to the bridge of the nose, covering most of the face, looked at the exposed eyes from afar. Yingjing was immersed in nervousness and did not notice the unnatural flicker in the man's eyes. She lowered her head and wiped away the sweat stains on her face. When Fucheng instructed the driver in front to lower the temperature further. Quickly stop in response to the situation. No need, we'll be there soon. That's it, thank you. She sat next to him while eating, and heard him cough a few times while picking up the dishes. His voice was very quiet, but she couldn't escape the constant attention to his movements. The green color on his fundus is somewhat noticeable. How tired this must be. I'm so tired and have to rush from the imperial capital to Shanghai specifically to guard Wen Yu's girlfriend. She envies Wen Yu very much. In his previous life, Wen Fucheng's commercial empire was very powerful. Because of her, the Wen family's industry ultimately withdrew from China and focused on expanding overseas. Only then did Lu Zixu take advantage of the male lead and dominate almost 70% of China's industry in his professional field. I hope everything in this life is still possible. He can also avoid missing out so much because of himself. Quietly watching him in response to the situation, he has such a strong sense of vigilance. I felt it from the moment I got on the car, it wasn't exposed, and I even allowed her to see it enough. This time, he appeared in front of her ahead of time. Will she look at herself a few more times? For the first time, a man who has always been strategic has fallen into a state of lack of confidence in his own skin. What is the significance of Lu Zixu's response to Yingjing? He has already challenged her in his previous life, but still lost in a mess. In this life, he can only gradually open her heart and slowly shift her attention to himself. The method of boiling frogs in warm water. The two people in the back seat each have their own thoughts. Arriving at the destination, I got off the car and was about to leave when I suddenly thought of something. Turning around and walking to the front of the car, the window that had fallen did not rise because of her departure. She bent down and poked her head into the car window on the roadside under the blessing of night. Bright eyes and cunning expression. With a shallow smile. Thank you, Mr. Wen, for taking me off. Have you been in Shanghai recently? I know of a particularly famous Shanghai cuisine restaurant. If you have time, I can treat you to a meal to express my gratitude. In 2 lifetimes, I took the initiative once in a timely manner. Once he sets the precedent, there will definitely be countless more times ahead. Who makes him more important than face? The little hands twisted on the skirt were sweating no less than before. I am gambling against the situation to see if he will agree to me. I can't wait for him to be tempted in this life, she will take the initiative. In theory, Wen Fucheng is too busy to deal with such a young girl as Yingjing. The driver was also curious, staring straight ahead with his ears already erect. Only a click was heard, and the car door opened. While waiting in response, Wen Fucheng took the initiative to get out of the car. I didn't think he stood so tall in front of me before, taking away the air around her. He just watched her silently without speaking. Cars passed by one, and the wind blew up her hair. She held her breath in the thin breath. Her fair hand held the phone and handed it to her. He said, "Save the number." His personal number. Yingjing took the phone and swiped it open, without a preset password. She quickly saved the numbers and names in. A low and honest voice came from above. Tomorrow I will return to the imperial capital. He finished speaking the last word and coincidentally saved the number, which means we can't eat together anymore. Okay, it's okay, at least they got to know each other early this time, right? It's okay to pretend in response to the situation. It's a bit regrettable, we can only invite you again next time. The sentence was interrupted before it could be finished. He withdrew the phone from her hand. So, see you in 3 days. Looking up in shock, the man had already turned around and got into the car. At his signal, the driver started the car and watched it slowly slide away. Her gaze followed the body of the car in response to the scene, and what she missed was the people on board. Because I will return to the imperial capital tomorrow, so I'll see you in 3 days, he agreed. Is that what she understood? That's what she understood. Yingjing bounced all the way to find Uncle Li, who had been waiting for her for a long time. Miss, why are you so happy today? Of course I'm happy, because today. She quickly couldn't laugh. Wait, did she forget something important just now? She saved the number on Wen Fucheng's phone, but his contact information is not on her phone. If he's just pretending to be polite, wouldn't it be over if he keeps not contacting her? Stretching on the seat in frustration. Uncle Lee, am I in conflict with the 8 characters of love? I have had a difficult time going through my entire life. Oh my goodness, for the sake of my tragic death in my previous life, would you please ask Cupid not to shake his hands when shooting arrows? Miss is so cute and beautiful. She is still young now. It's normal for her to be indecent when meeting people. In the future, you will meet the person you truly like. Listening to Uncle Lee's words, Yingjing almost couldn't pronounce the name of Lu Zishu. Uncle Lee, you are right. I will meet the person I truly like in the future. But it has nothing to do with Lu Zishu, so don't mention his name in front of me in the future. Stay away from the male and female leads in the original book and pursue one Fucheng for a sweet love story. Imagining a beautiful future in response to the situation, all the way to home. Seeing another familiar car in the garage. Has my brother come back yet? The young master came back tonight and was supposed to call you. I heard that I was going to pick you up and said I wanted you to come back to the study to find him. Go to the study. It's inevitable to be lectured again. There are 2 people in charge of the overall situation in the Ying family, one is Ying's father, and the other is his brother Yingzinan. Compared to Ying's father, Yingjing is more afraid of Yingzinan. Father is indulgent, brother is strict. But after experiencing everything in her previous life, she knew that Yingzinan had a tough mouth and a soft heart. Although he said he wouldn't help her, he became the last straw that crushed the Ying family due to his confrontation with the male lead Lu Zishu, who had already covered the sky with only one hand. Waiting for him is a cold prison cell. My brother gambled his life and fortune on her, and this time she will definitely not repeat the same mistake. Absolutely not. Yingzinan committed suicide in response to the situation and is conducting an investigation at the overseas branch. Ying's suppression of the news did not prevent someone from reporting to him as soon as he landed. Standing in front of the door, I took a deep breath and pushed the door open, walking in. Yingzinan saw her and lifted his head from a pile of documents. Slowly closed the notebook and waved to the girl at the door. He seemed to smile rather than smile. Come here, my brother promises not to kill you. Scenario. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Oath to chase when Fucheng in response to scenes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Oath to chase when Fucheng in response to scenes. Yingzinan returned to his home country without going to the company. While handling work, waiting for the situation to unfold. Standing pitifully at the door, especially after listening to my brother's words. I hesitated for a while and dared not enter. What kind of beast am I? Blink your eyes in response to the situation and slowly move in. Brother. Do you know I'm your brother? Why didn't you think about your brother and your parents when you committed suicide? At this point, Yingjing is really speechless. Silently enduring the anger from the big shot. Yingzinan has been a carefree little princess since Yingjing was young, and her parents will not impose too much future on her. On the contrary, Yingzinan has always been trained as an heir. When studying at Yingjing, Yingzinan is still studying. When eating, drinking, and having fun at Yingjing, Yingzinan is still studying. My brother said she was a lazy young lady, but in fact, she was the first to think of anything delicious or fun. If you don't have money, you can still swipe his secondary card. For the sake of money, forgive him for his current chatter. After all, her brother was quite handsome when he didn't scold her. Yingzinan threw the envelope handed to him by his secretary before leaving at Yingjing's feet, revealing scattered contents inside the opened and sealed envelope. Yingjing lowered his head and couldn't help but frown. The man and woman in the photo were none other than Lu Zishu and Yan Xuan. Is he the person you like? Brother, did you find someone to secretly take photos of them? You're not doing it right. Yingjing was a bit angry, but she forgot how she crazily pursued Lu Zishu in the face of an unchangeable plot before that. Yingzinan vividly recalled it for her. You mean to say me, who is chasing and blocking others, and threatening them. If you don't learn the same tricks in society, you have a clear understanding. Now, I want you to take a good look at how he and other women are pulling and arguing. That's the person he likes. You also know that's the person he likes, and you're still rushing to get involved. The Ying family gave birth to you, raised you, and promoted you to be a little princess for you to harm yourself. Brother, it's not that serious. It's not serious to have to cut your wrist and commit suicide. It's only serious when we take you to the crematorium. Brother, this is definitely brother. Yingjing was blocked by his words and was speechless. In short, I disagree with you being with Lu Zishu, not because of his background. It's entirely because he doesn't like you, so there's no need for you to continue wasting time on him. I should be Xinan's sister, and if you want to be compatible, you should be compatible with the best person. Agree and agree, Yingjing fully agrees. I feel the same way, brother. Don't worry, I won't chase after Lu Zishu in the future. This time, I changed my target. I guarantee you will be satisfied with my partner. Zinan glanced at her and wondered if this little girl was deliberately diverting her attention and not wanting him to continue meddling in her and Lu Zishu's affairs. Which target did you change? He wanted to see how to respond now. After listening to the scene, I decisively patted my chest. You know, the one from the Wen family in the imperial capital. When you and Yingjing have known each other for several years, and their relationship is quite good. He has seen it a few times, and he is decent and capable, but a bit fickle. However, if you really like the situation, it's not impossible to consider it. What does he think of you? He would never allow such a twisted melon to happen. It's not Wen. It's not Wen or anyone else, there's no one in the Wen family who can match the situation. Brother, enlarge the pattern a bit. The little girl is mocking him for not being well organized. So who are you talking about? It shouldn't be Wen Fucheng. Brother is so smart, he guessed it right. After she finished speaking, Zinan looked at her with an indescribable expression and tentatively spoke. Why don't you go pursue Lu Zishu? I turned my head away from him in response to the situation. Brother, you need to have some confidence in me. It's not that my brother lacks confidence in you, there is still a certain gap between dreams and reality. How could Wen Fucheng like you, a little girl who hasn't even grown hair yet? Zinan criticized his own sister. The situation is not bad, but it also depends on what to compare with. Yingjing is a pearl, and Wen Fucheng is the bright moon hanging in the sky. Not everyone can easily approach it. Anyway, I don't care, I'm going to pursue Wen Fucheng. Don't tell anyone about this yet, I'll tell you something. I'll announce it when I catch him. Seeing her confident expression, Zinan couldn't help but sigh. I hope to hear your good news before I bury myself. Yingjing gave him a glare. To put it bluntly, you still don't believe me. Why don't we make a bet like this? What if I catch up with Wen Fucheng? Zinan became interested for a moment and leaned against the desk, embracing his hands, looking at her with ease. If you really catch up with Wen Fucheng, I'll call you Dad. Yingjing looked disdainful. Do you know so much about being so rebellious and immoral? Zinan returned to her seat, as her affairs had caused a delay and there were still a few remaining documents that had not been processed. It's getting late, go back to sleep. Yingjing knew he didn't want to believe it, didn't say much, and didn't forget to put down his harsh words before leaving. There will be a day, don't underestimate me. Zinan's tone is plain. Got it, little princess. There is helplessness and indulgence. Returning to the room in response to the booming economy, she had no idea that her brother would turn around and sell her. I saw a man with a serious expression holding his phone and crazily sending messages. Zinan. My sister is crazy. She told me she wants to pursue Wen Fucheng. This group is their private group of the 4 young men in Shanghai, with only 4 people inside. After finishing his post, Yingjing realized that one of the 4 underachievers in Shanghai was Wen Yu. He cursed and quickly withdrew. Coincidentally, Wen Yu saw it. Not only did he see it, but the person involved is now in front of him. Originally, Wen Yu was going back to his own home to rest, but when Fucheng called him to the hotel with just one phone call. He was afraid of any important matters, so he didn't dare to delay for a moment. After sitting on a cold bench for half a day at the hotel, the man handling the work didn't pay any attention to him. Until when Fucheng released the pen in his hand. "Come here." Wen Yu spent more time with Wen Fucheng than with his parents. When he heard the man's tone, he couldn't help but think about where he had been doing poorly lately, otherwise there would have been an illusion that Wen Fucheng was very angry. "Uncle Air. Do you really like severe frost?" Ah. Faced with the sudden problem, he was stunned for a moment. Although he used to be a bit of a jerk, he never did anything out of line. Every girlfriend is easy to gather and scatter with, and it's Yan Shuang's turn. She likes it a bit, otherwise she wouldn't want to take her home to see her parents. "I like it. If I don't agree." "Uncle Air, why? What's wrong with Yan Shuang? You just met her once and came to this conclusion. Don't you think it's unfair to us?" Wen became more and more anxious. When Fucheng looked at him, his brows tightening as he looked at him. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. His comments on moments. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. His comments on moments in his previous life, when you married Yan Shuang. After marriage, there was indeed a sweet period of time, but with the rise of Lu Zishu, Yan Shuang betrayed Wen Yu. In the end, the two divorced, and Yan Shuang couldn't benefit from Lu Zishu. Finally, she thought of Wen Yu, who had been abandoned by herself. Poor Wen Yu thought she was truly repentant, but in despair, she even lost one leg. If it weren't for Wen Fucheng pulling him up at the time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Do you think she really likes you? Isn't it true to like two people together? Wen Fucheng looked at him like he was looking at a mentally disabled person. How could Wen Yu live to this age and still be so innocent after so many romantic relationships? Are you having a brain problem? Wen Yu choked for a moment and looked at his second uncle incredulously. No matter how strict Wen Fucheng used to be, he wouldn't say that to him. Wen Yu's innocent young man's heart was instantly shattered. You still taught me. Wen Fucheng supported his forehead. I'll teach you how to handle people and manage a company. I've never taught you how to be so disoriented. What does it mean? What's the problem with Yan Shuang? Yan Shuang. If your eyes are on you, don't think you don't need to be wary of the people around you. No matter how close you are, it's necessary to be a little vigilant. Including you, Uncle Air. Of course. When Fucheng sat at his desk, hands folded together, and spoke to him with great care. For now, I don't think she's suitable enough for you to bring back to the Wen family. As far as I know, your last relationship didn't end long ago. If this is what you call true love, it's necessary for me to carefully examine your determination. What? Before Wen Yu could react, Wen Fucheng spoke directly. From now on, I will stop all your cards. From now on, I will rely on myself to work and earn money to maintain your so-called true love. When one day I let go, I will talk again. From heaven to hell, it's just a moment. Wen Yu couldn't help but understand what Wen Fucheng meant. The Wen family's vast industry, even if it is not inherited by Wen Yu in the future, at least half of the country will be handed over to him. Throughout, Wen Fucheng has been wholeheartedly teaching him how to manage the company. All those who are close to him will naturally be considered to have come for his status and status. Wen Yu is also willing to accept the test. But Uncle Air, have you ever thought that none of this holds true? No matter how you test me now, I am always a member of the Wen family, and others naturally feel the same way. So, starting from tomorrow, I won't bring you with me anymore. Not only that, I will also let everyone know that I have given up on you. Are you serious? Uncle Air is so ruthless. When you doesn't understand. Uncle Air. You will understand in the future. After completing all of this, when Fucheng suggested that he could leave. When you walked to the door and grabbed the doorknob, as if he turned back unwillingly. Second uncle, haven't you ever been irrational about someone for so long in your lifetime? At that moment, one couldn't understand his second uncle anymore. He had never seen this man show weakness before. At this moment, his tone seemed to soften and he chuckled in self-deprecation. I just missed out too much because I was too rational. My whole life won't be as long as you think. Do you think I'll harm you? When you shook his head, not feeling it. I fully understand your concerns, so I won't argue too much. On the contrary, I will prove with my own determination that your answer tonight is wrong. Uncle Air, I will prove it to you. He repeated his words. After waiting for him to leave, when Fucheng still laughed at him for being too naive. Sometimes it's useless for two people to rely on one person's determination. When you walked out of the door and was blown by the cold wind, feeling much clearer. When Fucheng looked at his phone inside the room, lost in thought. That string of familiar numbers caught my eye, and I could even recite them backwards. Input it into the friend application and it will quickly pop up for identity verification. The WeChat avatar for Yingjing is very simple. Just 2 words. Leopard wealth. A leopard fairy from Journey to the West has a cool pair of sunglasses on her nose, with 2 words on them. Leopard rich, also known as Big Rich, is a popular meme on the internet recently. He thought for a moment and typed his name to send it over. Yingjing, who received a friend notification, was splashing water on his face and casually grabbed his phone. There are many people who added her, some of whom don't know where they got her number from. In the past, people she didn't know would be ignored directly by her. Today she went in one by one to see. I just don't want to miss out on the news that when Fucheng would add her as a friend. I didn't have much hope initially, but who knew the first one I clicked on was. Yingjing thought he had read wrong, so he took a closer look several times. The result of being too aggressive was accidentally rejecting. I was heartbroken on the spot and needed to call an ambulance. Kneeling by the bed, wailing incessantly. After finishing work, Yingza South Road passed by the door and couldn't help but knock. Yingjing, why are you going crazy? I howled in response to the scene for half a day. Brother, your brother.in.law who is about to cook has flown away. What a mess, he told her to go to bed quickly and turned around to return to his own room. When Fucheng did not pay attention to a rejected message, but added it again. He is very patient with her. The phone shook in the palm of Yingjing's hand, and the girl lying by the bed immediately looked up. Neglecting the messy and fluffy hair and a hazy face. Brother, your cooked brother.in.law has returned. Yingjing jumped happily onto the bed and just jumped. The bed has collapsed. Upon hearing a loud noise, Yingzinen rushed over and knocked on the door 3 times before getting a response before entering the room. Facing a room that seemed to have been looted, let's take a look at our sister's crazy appearance. Previously, I thought you had some hope of pursuing Wen Fucheng, but now I think he would be crazy if Wen Fucheng likes you. Yingzinen rushed her to the guest room and planned to have someone bring a new bed over tomorrow during the day. With joy, I rolled around with my phone in my arms. Yingzinen couldn't help but shake his head as he watched her almost fleeing figure. I took a photo of the bed collapsing and posted it on my social media. Yingzinen. In the middle of the night, Yingjing collapsed the bed. Image, soon, below are various comments and likes. The most frequently replied one is. Jingbao is really amazing. Rose down, it's all like this. Otherwise, there are so many coincidences in this world that even Yingzinen forgot to exchange WeChat with Wen Fucheng on some occasion earlier due to social politeness. He forgot that when Fucheng had been lying on his friend list for so long. When Fucheng naturally also saw Yingzinen's social circle. He looked at the photo without her figure for a long time, imagining her appearance. A unique comment emerged from a pile of following comments. When Fucheng. It's very cute. The friend of the CEO is also the CEO, and the friend of the Crown Prince is also the Crown Prince. One by one, they are all acquaintances. Of course, many people have also seen the comments. Mr. Wen, something's wrong with you. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Sunset and Evening Breeze love you and me both. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Sunset and Evening Breeze love you and me both. There is a message about Wen Fucheng's late-night reply to Yingzinen's friend circle. That night, the pot was fried. Yingzinen only found out the next day. The assistant also arrived at breakfast time and saw his expression of wanting to speak but hesitating. Yingzinen took a sip of the breakfast congee prepared by his aunt. Just say whatever you want, and you're not afraid of getting sick from holding it back. The moments you posted last night. What happened to the friend circle he posted last night? But this actually reminded him. Later, while Yingjing hasn't woken up yet, he needs to quickly delete his social circle. If the little girl finds out, she may have to make him look like something. There must have been a lot of people commenting on your social media last night. This is not nonsense, he is one of the few outstanding young men in Yingzinen and Shanghai. Friends can circle around the Shanghai River. So. The assistant spoke cautiously, afraid that the next words would offend this gentleman. Emperor Entertainment's Mr. Wen also commented. Just leave a comment, it's not something that can't be seen. Wait. Which Mr. Wen are you talking about? Who else can there be, Mr. Wen? Wen Fucheng's father had already abdicated for several years, and during the era when the old man was in power, Yingzinen still didn't know where to pick up girls. Wen Fucheng, Mr. Wen. The memory of Yingzinen running away from home slowly recovered, and privately he had no interaction with Wen Fucheng. The few times the same frame was used as a transition. He took out his phone and saw that there were indeed many more messages, including the other parties. Looking at those words, Yingzinen's face darkened slightly. Very cute. Cute egg. The man threw his phone at the dining table and it collided with the glass dining table, making a crisp sound. What do you mean by, heat? The assistant is working hard to reduce the sense of presence and become a quail. How do you know, isn't he your friend? Adhering to the principle of prioritizing money, the assistant began to flatter Yingzinen without any bottom line. I've probably seen you at a banquet before, and I think you're excellent, boss, and I want to make friends. Yingzinen has been hanging around since childhood, handsome with a mischievous aura. It's completely different from the cold aura of meeting Wen Fucheng. After listening to the assistant's analysis, he found it very reasonable. Not only that, he also seemed to have a glimpse of the scene at that time. It was really a friend that Wen Fucheng took the initiative to add. Originally, Zinen didn't want to give it yet, it's not because he's afraid the other person might think he's stingy. With a wave of his hand, he added his friend like this. You're right, he just thinks I'm excellent and wants to make friends with ambitious young people like me. There's no way, I'm just too excellent, and even others think my sister is cute. Assistant. Boss, are you sure this is the correct solution? Why does he feel like something is wrong? It should be noted that the people of the Ying and Wen families do not interact privately, and there is no interaction in business. Unfortunately, Yingzinen was just displeased with Wen Fucheng because he was excellent. Excellent to the level of seniors in the industry, all use Wen Fucheng as a benchmark to educate the next generation. And Yingzinen is one of the next generation. He thought it was just a minor incident and never expected that there would be a follow-up soon. Before leaving, Yingzinen asked his aunt to send Yingjing a breakfast. The sound of a car starting came from downstairs, and I rubbed my bed and walked to the window. Thinking of last night's incident was a bit awkward. I realized it wasn't my own room. Push open the window and greet Yingjing, who is about to board the car. Good morning, brother. The man was answering the phone when he heard her voice and turned around to look. I don't know what the person on the other end of the phone said, but his originally cheerful expression sank at a visible speed. What are you saying? The imperial court sent one Fucheng to talk about it himself this time. The suddenly rising tone was heard clearly by the girl lying by the window. Previously, it was said that there was no private business dealings between the Ying family and the Wen family, let alone any business dealings. But it cannot hinder the development of the times and the progress of society. It is difficult for a single industry to maintain the position of a large company in society. Yingjia is in urgent need of transformation and expansion. Looking at the entire country of China, the imperial entertainment led by Wen Fucheng is the most suitable partner. The Wen family has a great business and a wide range of businesses under its development. The company has submitted a cooperation plan and it has been approved. To show sincerity, it is natural to have their Crown Prince Yingjing personally go to the capital to discuss cooperation intentions. Originally, the response from the other company was personally discussed by the vice president. It's not a big deal. Yingjing is well aware that not only the Ying family needs to win this cooperation. A piece of plump meat, who wouldn't want to take a bite? As a result, he is about to leave now. The secretary called and said that the other party has changed people. It's still the boss who changed. It's hard not to make people think too much. Is it related to last night's social circle? Yingjing called his assistant over. You have a lot of gossip and gossip. Can you tell me if Wen Fucheng has ever had a woman by his side over the years? The assistant shook his head. I haven't heard of it before. If it were really there, the circle would have exploded long ago. But it's hard to guarantee that he protected the other party very well and didn't reveal any information. With the means of Wen Fucheng, few people in the entire emperor dared to ask for trouble and oppose him if they wanted to keep any secrets. But over the years, Mr. Wen's itinerary has been quite transparent, either at work or on the way to work. Yingjing looked over with a sharp gaze. You know him so well. Assistant, please shut up quickly. We can't say that Wen Fucheng is his idol, can we? Regardless of the other party's motives, Yingjing must go. The group went directly to Shanghai airport. Just as Yingjing landed in the imperial capital, Yingjing quickly boarded the plane heading towards the capital. My friend spoke with some concern. Is it really okay to do this? Will Zenin get angry when he finds out? He's too busy to handle himself now, so there's no air traffic control for me. Don't worry. Just consider it a trip. Didn't you say you wanted to travel last time? Wei Yi couldn't help but cry and laugh. But what she wants to go to is the beach. It's watching the handsome guy with 8 abdominal muscles rolling in the waves, blowing the sea breeze and stepping on the soft sand under his feet, rather than going to the imperial capital that can squeeze people to death. May I ask Miss Yingjing why she suddenly had a sudden idea to go to the imperial capital? Don't worry about your brother. Faced with Wei Yi, Yingjing didn't want to hide it. But I didn't say too much. I can't say that she was reborn with the purpose of pursuing Wen Fucheng. My friend will definitely send her to a mental hospital. Wei Yi is her best friend, and in her previous life, she was her agent. She devoted herself wholeheartedly to taking care of her aftermath until Yingjing's death. Compared to the unfortunate ending of her loved ones around her, Wei Yi is the only one who is better. After Yingjing's death, she left a lot of property to take care of. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to see her get married. In this life, she must strive to make everyone around her happy and complete. Before shutting down, Yingjing Mimi posted a friend circle. Background. The sunset and evening breeze must love you and me. End of this chapter.